Thank you very much for attending this panel. We will start right away. The topic is very interesting. Invisible battlefields, hybrid wars, and the politics of influence. I'm gonna say a few words before introducing our panelists. So we are addressing a topic that is at the center of the media currently, but is also kind of old, and that we see over and over the problematics on several continents. The gold and the modus operandi are not new, but the technology makes it more difficult to address. And as we discussed earlier with the panelists, it can touch any countries, whatever its level of political maturity. And this is what we are going to address today. Today we have the honor to have among us Her Excellency Dr. Teuta Vodo, former Mohammed, CEO of Derasat from Bahrain, His Excellency Jean-Marie Bockel, former Deputy Minister of France and Special Envoy from the President Macron, and Johannes Kornberger, expert in strategic intelligence and founder of McKinder Advisory, a consulting firm. To dive right away in the topic, I will ask you the first question, Mrs. Vodo. And since this is also your specialty, we're discussing about how hybrid actions evolve beyond traditional coercion to include cyber intrusions, online influence campaigns. My question to you is, how is the expansion of cyberspace transforming low-intensity conflict, and what forms of international cooperations are needed to build, at the same time, collective resilience against these undeniable threats, but also cooperation between societies and countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here and to be speaking about such a crucial subject. And indeed, before I answer this question, I need to draw the attention and need to start from the very key point. It has changed. The shape is different. So whenever we talk now about war, we should leave behind what we have known so far as the conventional, the traditional war. So there are two key elements before we tackle any other aspect in this regard. First of all is the space and time. So now a threat actor can be sitting somewhere beyond the frontier, and it can happen anytime. So we do not see anymore the soldier, which is crossing the border as we have known it so far. It is important to repeat this again and to raise awareness on this, since when we address all these key issues, we first of all talk to our citizens, who very often, unfortunately, can be a victim of many manipulations through social media, through fake news. And this is part of the warfare. And what has been such a challenge so far is to understand and to list it as part of this hybrid war. So when we talk now about war, and again, I'd like to repeat it because I find it so crucial, it is not anymore about combating with military capabilities. This is now about weakening the adversary. Now, this means that very often it's about simply confusing. It is about distracting. It is about taking the means, such as, for example, a drone, which costs only a couple of 100 euros, but to address respond to the attack. So what does this mean? In the meanwhile, the countries, of course, they have been working so hard to get into the other methods in order to, through lasers and so on, to respond to this. So it is important that the response towards the attack is not more expensive than the attack itself. But of course, Europe and all the other countries cannot just simply defend themselves. It costs a lot, and you cannot put all this means, pipelines, wherever it is, in the air, in the sea, only by defending. It should be more than that. It should be by having a proactive approach. So before we say the measures, it's important to list the kinds of sovereignties that we are talking here. So far, we've been, whenever we define sovereignty, we think of territory, population, institutions, the government, and now this has changed. So the definition itself of sovereignty, first of all, there is a cognitive sovereignty. It means that we should equip our citizens to respond duly to the fake news, to be able to double check. The second one is the digital sovereignty. It means that all the countries should be equipped with the right infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, in order to defend whenever there is a cyber attack, but not by exceeding the cost while defending themselves. And the second one, the third one, which is very important as well, is the institutional sovereignty. So not only the countries, they should be equipped, but if they do not cooperate with each other, it's impossible to face all the cyber attacks. Why? Well, because they don't know borders. Here we are not talking about country A against country B. The cyber warfare goes beyond the borders, as we have known. So this means that there is indeed an essential need to cooperate with each other, and this can be done through international organizations which have to trust each other through the data sharing, the data transfer, in order to respond to the attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vodo. Mr. Svoboda, I have two questions for you. The first question is, given the fact that, like you stated, Mrs. Vodo, information and cyberspace is now the fifth domain of warfare. There is earth, naval, air, space, and now cyber, or information. I would like you to speak about what could be done in terms of education, literacy, and how to train people and society on this domain, how people can be responsibilized about cyber warfare and informational warfare, but also the framework that is needed in terms of cooperation, specifically in Europe, given your background. Thank you.
Thank you. This element is extremely, I'm repeating, extremely important, because we are now facing the cyber threats. And I am teaching this subject because I think that there's a highly need to be better informed about the profound change we are now facing. Why? Because when NATO came into existence, it was in 1949, many years ago. The world was totally different. So, and I am to point out three elements which are very important. When we read the Washington Treaty, so we can read the Article 5 saying that we have to trigger a collective defense if or when we are attacked, when there is an armed attack against the country. And the question is, so how we could recognize the attack from cyber from as you say, from nowhere. So, so this is very, 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 very difficult. So the first element is that we are now facing the new type of threat, new type of attack. So this is very important because when we read the constitutions of the individual NATO member states, so now we are shocked because it is very difficult. So to start the collective defense, because it's very difficult to recognize what type of malicious activity in cyberspace is so dangerous, like the armed attack against that we are de facto in the hands of the intelligence, of the secret service. Because who is to say us what is now doing somewhere in cyber? So just the intelligence is saying that type of activity is dangerous, so we have to trigger collective defense. The question is, and do we have any chance to control or to be sure that the intelligence is not playing game with the government? So please, we can go to the beginning of the conflict between Gaza and Gaza. It is also the question of intelligence also. So this is the new phenomenon that for the decision-making process, the intelligence is playing extremely important role for democratic countries. And we need a democratic control of the decision making. And the third, the last point, the element I want to point out, is a question that, speaking about the year, on behalf of the NATO member state, is the flag of the United States. 32 countries. So, and it is very difficult to make a consensus. It will be the new element that the decision making is based on achieving consensus. And I am very skeptical because of the coalition of willings, because the coalition of willings is the way how to destroy the system. So, and the three elements are to put together. So first question is that we are now facing the new type of threats. The second is that it's very difficult to recognize when the threat is the threat according to the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. And the very last is to unify of the 32 countries to recognize that type of threat and to say we are to trigger, to invoke the Article 5. So that's my first remark and the answer to a question. So it is also very important for my students in my institute. So we are still thinking about the problems because really a lot has been changed.
Thank you. My third question. adapt to this new ambiguous and security environment, and in which traditional defense and answers no longer suffice.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Allow me to begin by thanking the Amadeus Institute for its kind invitation and by expressing deep respect to His Majesty King Mohammed VI, King of the Kingdom of Morocco, for his steadfast commitment to dialogue and regional cooperation. It is a privilege to join you here in Tangier to reflect on the evolving nature of global security. We meet at a moment when the nature of conflict is being fundamentally rewritten. Hybrid warfare has redefined global security by shifting conflict into invisible arenas where influence, information, technology, and narratives determine power. The Middle East and North Africa region stand at the center of this transformation and must adapt to a rapidly evolving and increasingly ambiguous security landscape. Traditional conflicts still exist, but hybrid warfare and threats now dominate the political, informational, maritime, and technological arenas. These tools blur war and peace. They empower non-state actors, and they weaponize narratives. As hybrid tactics expand from drones to cyber attacks and information warfare, states must rethink how they define and protect security. So I just want to throw in 4 examples on how we can, really deep dive into these narratives. So we have about 4 fronts that we need to focus on. First, non-state actors have fundamentally altered the nature of modern conflict. They have evolved into political, informational, and cyber players capable of shaping the national cohesion. Such actors exploit external sponsorship. They advance technologies and hybrid tactics that allow them to act as outsized influence. Their rise is a deeper crisis. That challenge today is how the international community is going to categorize these actors. Number 2 is the information that has become the active battleground. Narratives that once remained local now spread across borders within seconds. They mobilize supporters, they polarize societies, and they manipulate perceptions. While extremist groups, political movements, and hostile actors weaponize information to undermine trust and destabilize institutions. Hybrid warfare is as much a war for truth as it is a war for territory in the time being. Third, technology has dramatically accelerated the scale and impact of hybrid threats. Low-cost drones We in Bahrain have responded by launching our first cybersecurity shield drill last August, where we united all stakeholders to strengthen our national resilience. Yet despite rising investment in cyber defense, the lack of a binding global framework on cyber conflict or influence operations leaves a legal vacuum that both states and non-state actors continue to exploit. Fourth, and I think this is one of the most important examples that we really need to focus on, is the maritime domain. It is now one of the most exposed arenas for hybrid threats. In the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb, drones, GPS spoofing, underwater devices, and proxy groups threaten global trade on a daily basis and regional stability. The 2024 interception of the underwater drones in the Red Sea, along with the Houthi attacks that contributed to cutting several internet cables, showed how easily maritime and digital infrastructure could be disrupted. This evolving threat environment continues to shape the security partnership of the Gulf. From Operation Earnest Will in the 1987 to the Combined Maritime Forces headquartered in Bahrain in 2021 to Operation Prosperity Guardian in 2023, all of which were created to keep the maritime navigation safe in the region and then the wider region, because maritime is always connected. Ladies and gentlemen, across all domains, the invisible battlefield now even in a contested information space, Bahrain demonstrates that clarity, credibility, and responsible statecraft are possible. This is the message that we carry with us when we prepare to assume our seats at the United Nations Security Council next year. The bottom line is to remain secure and influential in the era of hybrid conflict. The international community must pursue these strategic priorities, which are three. We must strengthen regional cyber coordination. We have to invest in narrative resilience, and we must elevate diplomacy as an early warning and a de-escalation instrument. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. We're starting to have an assessment of the threat now as a transnational threat, and we are also starting to see that some convention, like the Budapest Convention on Cyber, is not enough to address those threats. My next question is to you, Mr. Jean-Marie Bockel, is as a long-standing witness and actor in terms of addressing those questions, both in cyberspace but also on the African continent, after witnessing what happens in the Sahel region, I would like you to intervene on what forms of regional cooperation or institutional innovation could be needed to project credible narratives in those areas, but also to counter such transnational actors that are always acting in what we call a deniable area, and so not to be identified as acting for any foreign interferences. Thank you. Mr. Bockel, it's up to you.
Thank you. I will speak in French. En fait, à ce stade d'une et je vous en dirai un mot, y compris d'ailleurs sur les capacités offensives. Et puis, vous faisiez allusion à mes fonctions d'envoyé spécial du président Macron qui se sont terminées il y a quelques mois sur la question de la présence militaire française dans certains pays africains et tous les problèmes évidemment, y compris en termes d'image que cela pose dans le contexte actuel. Et pendant cette période, je me suis aussi rendu compte que, y compris sur les questions sur lesquelles j'avais travaillé quelques années avant, les choses avaient changé, et vous avez été plusieurs à le dire, à une très grande vitesse. Au début des années 2010, les pays européens commençaient à s'organiser sur ces questions. La France l'avait fait aussi. Il y avait un état-major cyber qui était déjà créé. Il y avait une agence nationale de sécurité des systèmes qui était sur des questions y compris civiles, économiques, etc., protection des personnes. Mais on est en train de prendre du retard, y compris par rapport à nos grands partenaires européens, britanniques, allemands. alors que par ailleurs, nous étions sur les aspects défense militaire très engagés. Et donc, cette situation devenait vraiment préoccupante. Il y a un fossé qui se créait. Et à l'époque, évidemment, j'avais fait des propositions qui ont été reprises dans les lois de programmation pour une remise à niveau. Mais c'était aussi, évidemment, une prise de conscience dans la société, que ce soit au niveau économique, que ce soit au niveau des citoyens, des familles, de l'arrivée dans leur vie de ce risque. Et là, je voudrais vous raconter simplement une anecdote qui nous amène également à un certain nombre d'agresseurs potentiels. Et j'avais donc posé la question au chef d'état-major particulier du président de la République de l'époque, puisque cette question était vue à ce niveau-là, que je connaissais, puisque quand j'avais été vice-ministre de la Défense quelque temps avant, il était le chef du renseignement militaire. Et ce général m'avait dit, écoutez, venez, je vous reçois à l'Élysée, dans nos bureaux, au palais présidentiel, avec mes collaborateurs, on va vous expliquer ce qu'on sait faire aujourd'hui, mais à une condition, c'est que vous n'en parlez pas. Ça ne doit pas figurer dans votre rapport. En fait, la seule chose que j'ai mis dans mon rapport, en accord avec eux, c'est il est important que sur cette question de la dissuasion cyber, donc des capacités offensives, bien sûr, chacun garde ses secrets, son savoir-faire, mais au moins qu'on puisse faire connaître une doctrine, de manière à ce que les agresseurs éventuels sachent ce qui est acceptable et ce qui ne l'est pas. Et c'est d'ailleurs quelques années plus tard ce qui s'est mis en place. Vous savez, la dissuasion nucléaire, évidemment, elle existe pour ne pas s'en servir. La dissuasion cyber, sur les capacités offensives, il faut qu'elle s'exerce de temps en temps pour être crédible. Ma deuxième remarque porte sur, quelques années plus tard, le travail que j'étais amené à faire donc, sur la reconfiguration, c'est-à-dire la réduction progressive de bases militaires françaises qui existaient encore dans certains pays africains, 4 à la demande des pays, hein, bien entendu, mais qui commençaient vraiment à être mal vues par la population dans des contextes souvent difficiles, dans des contextes également d'agression, djihadistes, etc. Et évidemment, on avait aussi eu l'expérience du Mali, où la présence française a été très bien vue au début, et puis évidemment ensuite très, très mal perçue. Et là, évidemment, on a été confronté, et j'étais amené à travailler là-dessus, c'est ce qu'on appelle, encore aujourd'hui, la guerre informationnelle. Et vous y avez fait allusion, madame et monsieur. En fait, c'est une guerre tout azimut. Il y a à la fois les moyens cyber, les plus sophistiqués, d'autres moyens technologiques encore, des moyens également sur le contenu, sur l'information, sur les différents canaux d'information, jusqu'aux réseaux sociaux, jusqu'aux boucles WhatsApp, etc. Et puis aussi des moyens beaucoup plus, comment dirais-je, rustiques, hein, comme tout simplement la manipulation, la désinformation en direction des populations. Et là, en l'occurrence, il s'agissait bien sûr de montrer que la France, avec encore des soldats, était vraiment la cause de tous les problèmes. Et évidemment, c'est aussi là qu'on se rend compte que la réponse, elle doit être sur tous les canaux. Il faut des relais, il faut savoir faire passer le message. Le dernier point, et j'en termine de ce propos, vous avez abordé, et y compris dans votre question, la coopération à tout niveau, entre alliés notamment européens de l'OTAN ou autres alliés, pays du Golfe et Afrique du Nord. En fait, c'est très important, c'est essentiel, mais ne perdons jamais de vue une difficulté. On peut avoir un partenaire, ou deux. On sait ce qu'on partage, on sait ce qu'on ne partage pas. Et on est en fait dans un partenariat de confiance. Mais quand on a beaucoup de partenaires dont certains peuvent être des maillons faibles, c'est-à-dire en moindre capacité de protéger ce qu'on échange, notamment dans le domaine cyber, alors c'est un risque majeur que l'on prend. C'est le cheval de Troie, hein, c'est-à-dire l'intrusion possible, et c'est ça qui rend cette coopération difficile. Difficile, mais pas impossible, car évidemment, à terme, nécessaire.
Merci. Johannes, my fifth question is for you. And you are working as an advisor in the private sector. And we had testimonies coming from more institutional actors, but the private sector also has a role to play in this domain. And like you stated, Mr. Bokel, it's also about narratives, it's also about content, so it's about cognition. Can you elaborate a bit on what is really at stakes in terms of cognition and how it can affect our perception of reality and harm the societies? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and it's fantastic to be here with you all today, and I just want to say thanks to the Amadeus Institute and the hospitality from His Majesty King Mohammed VI to be here today and discuss these important issues. So when it comes to hybrid threats, this is what we're talking about. It's often framed as an artificial phenomenon. It's often framed, like you said, misinformation, cybercrime, disinformation. But hybrid threats, they exist in the technological dimension, but they're also directed at flesh and blood human beings. And when we think about who the actors are, at the end of the day, in a kinetic war, in a real traditional war, encirclement is cutting off the supply lines for food, for ammunition. In a hybrid war, encirclement means cutting off the supply lines for objectivity and cutting off the supply lines of truth. And that means that you and me are fair game in this hybrid war. It's no longer a conventional military matter. It's weaponization of society at the end of the day. And just one note on perception. We as human beings, we can't make decisions until we've perceived our environment first. One comes before the other. We need to perceive our environment and then we can act. It's human nature, and when we think about cognitive encirclement or cognitive effects, if you can shape the reality from all sides with targeted messaging via AI, messaging via algorithmic manipulation, misinformation, you can shape perception before decisions are made. And I think we see that happening a lot in the European space at the moment when it comes to hybrid threats from Russia. We see it also in shaping the information space globally, actually, as well, across Africa, across the Atlantic. Having said all this, I want to push back a little bit on the idea that modern conflict is increasingly fought in this digital space, because ultimately, yes, digital spaces have redefined the global strategic environment, but not to the extent that it's changed how we humans function. I said it before, we're flesh and blood human beings. We still need to perceive first. So if we think about intelligence, perception, and networks, these have always, and I mean always, been part of any contest for power. It's a pattern that's centuries old. If you go back to the Roman Empire, they started to build roads, and a lot of roads across Europe. They had placards, they had meetings, marketplaces, public theaters, where messaging was a massive part of gaining an information advantage. So are we looking at a new threat? I'm not so sure. I think it is a new threat in terms of the tools that we have, in terms of AI, in terms of the delivery. But ultimately, these are old threats with a new disguise. What can we do about this? We've been trying since the Roman times to gain an information advantage over our adversaries. The threats are so real, and they always come at a heightened risk, especially with great power politics. It's no surprise that we see that rising in the moment. As soon as there is a great power contest, it's only natural that the information war follows suit. We mentioned different types of sovereignty here on the panel today already, but I want to add another layer to that, and that's algorithmic sovereignty. What does that look like? And maybe I can throw that question back at everyone here today. What does algorithmic sovereignty look like? What does that mean in terms of data centers? Where are those data centers located? What teams have you got building those data centers? How can countries across the global south develop tools to gain algorithmic sovereignty in the 21st century, where every item that we see on our phones, every new reel that we flip towards on our TikTok or Instagram or X, how could we make sure that this space doesn't become a space of weaponization, rather connectivity, dialogue, and ultimately being able to bring humans closer together rather than take them apart. So thanks.
Thank you, Jonas. It allows me to drop to my first question after the first line of question. And this question will be addressed to you, Abdullah Al-Ahmed. It's given the fact that it's also about the vector and not only the threat in itself. How could a new form of diplomacy exist, or old form, but informal diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, religious diplomacy, help to prevent attacks on societies and communities? And what form of diplomacy exists to possibly be an answer to such problematics?
Thank you, Thomas, for this question. So when it comes to diplomacy, in my previous role, we did some work on reviewing how many tracks of diplomacy we could formulate or work through. And I can't remember, it was between 7 or 9 tracks of diplomacy. So it starts with the official track, which is track 1, government to government, official channels, through foreign ministries and official diplomatic channels. And then you have the track 1.5, whenever there is like a mediation process going on between conflicting parties. You have the governments, and they work through institutions such as think tanks to facilitate the process of mediation. And then obviously you have track 2, which is strictly non-governmentals, just either institutions, academia, or think tanks. And then you have other 5 or 6 tracks, which is parliamentarian diplomacy. Even sports could be categorized as one of forms of diplomacy. Cultural, music, food, even religious. So, throwing an example in Bahrain, His Majesty the King, formulated a center, which is the King Hamad Global Center for Coexistence and Tolerance. This center, is focused on spreading the message of tolerance and coexistence, which reflects how religious diplomacy, could really build bridges between, societies, nations, and different sectors. So all of these forms of diplomacy are, building bridges, connecting people together, reducing tensions, reducing conflict, and to continue this form of connectivity, I believe that nations should really invest in the younger generation, to make them aware, educate them more on more connectivity, and spreading the message of positivity, and to actually put in Arabic we say تحط نقطة على الجرح, put the finger on the wound. I think hope is what societies need now. Hope is not only for the younger generation, it's also for the elder generation. So whenever there is hope, I think there is always positivity.
Thank you. My second question will be addressed to Mrs. Vodo and Mr. Svoboda. We've talked about the targets, the actors, proxies maybe, but also like we've talked about soldiers, most likely activists, I would say, that are always acting as as deniable actors. I would like to brainstorm with you about first the role of intelligence, because intelligence is also based on knowledge. So what control could we have over intelligence? Is there spaces outside of NATO, outside of formal institution like EU, like any organization, that there is space to discuss this intelligence and anticipation leverage, and what could be the answer? It's really about brainstorming about that.
Thank you for this question. It's very difficult to give you a clear answer about the control and the role of the intelligence. Because, as Johannes said about the old wars and the new wars, the hybrid or proxy wars, in my view, all the wars, they were hybrid. But the new instruments we have today make the soft tools more effective. So informations, sanctions, etc., etc. Because the new instruments we have shorten the distance between the nations and the states, but they do not create mutual understanding or mutual confidence. That's such a different question. On the contrary, all the differences are more visible. So we can see the huge gap between the European countries, Europe, rich countries, poor countries. So the problems are more visible, and this is the tool how to be used in the hybrid war, using all the arguments. So, and we can see the policy of some influential countries like China and Russia, mainly in Africa. So Mali is an example of the defeat of Europe. Because what was said by Putin maybe 2 years ago, he said, we are ready to help Africa, but we are not to give the African countries how to govern. So we have no conditions. You have a democratic system or semi-democratic system or authoritarian system or the totalitarian system. Who does care? It is not the problem. So, but the Europeans are still saying, so we are asking you, you must do that or that or that. So, and suddenly some other countries are more influential, and we can see that in the Sahara region, what has happened in the recent time. So this is also the part of the hybrid war, saying, so you can see, so maybe the failed states, and this is also the reservoir for many terrorist organizations. So this is the way how to use the proxy war, and it is one, globally it is one system, and we have to understand it. And going back to your question, so it is the task for the intelligence to understand, to give us proper, well-analyzed informations, and to give us maybe we can say the correct and precise description. So, and this is the temptation for the intelligence to play a game, as I said, but de facto we have very limited way how to control the intelligence. So in my country, we have special laws saying how to control the intelligence, but yes. So if intelligence is very well functioning and effective, is fully protected against the real control coming from the democratic parliaments or the governments. So that's why I am not capable of giving you clear and precise answer to your question, but what is general advice is to read the information from the different sources, not to be limited by receiving just one source as the source of information. This is the only way, and for the future politicians and the future representatives of the government, so my advice is be very, very careful, because everything is now new, and if we are to understand the situation and if we are to protect ourselves, so we must be well informed, and we have to receive the information from the different sources, not to stop the pieces of information coming from, for example, from Russia or from Ukraine, saying this is the Russia, this is the Russian propaganda. No, I speak Russian, so we need also to read what is now the discussion in Russia. Not to think that Russia is the aggressor, Russia is the main threat. So if it is the case, you do not understand the style of thinking of the Russian people. So that's maybe that's my answer to your question.
Thank you. It is. Mrs. Voda.
Yes, indeed, you mentioned rightly that all the threat actors, they can simply deny that they've been the ones attacking. So it is very easy for the countries which are sending these threat actors to simply say, no, it was not us. So how do you identify, even when you simply reveal that yes, these threat actors, they belong to that one specific country. Look at what happened in Estonia in 2007, what happened with North Korea, simply denying that it was them behind the individuals who attacked, and or power greed in Ukraine with the Russians. So, I mean, there are so many examples where it is so easy to manipulate and to simply say, like, hey, it was not us. So how do you deal with this? This is why when we mention cooperation, this is not between countries, this is between technological companies, this is between the giants of IT today, because it is with them especially that you, so non-state actors, that you can reveal more about the cyber warfare, and you can cooperate more. So it is beyond the pure borders as we have known them so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mrs. Svoboda.
Because it is very important what you said, because you are right, and it's very complex, and we have to understand. And maybe we do understand as independent persons, but we have to take into consideration the state and the national interests. Maybe the society does understand, but we need the decision-making made by the governments.
Thank you. Mr. Brokel, I would like you to intervene on this question, but also about what you've been saying before, the fact that France and French government were subject of informational attacks about their actions in Africa, and how could we explain like not the lack of answer, but like the gap between the intensity of the attacks and the intensity of the answers from a country such as France? And what would be your recommendation for communities to strengthen resilience and also to public institutions?
Oui, c'est en effet un exemple intéressant qui m'amène d'ailleurs à ne jamais oublier la dimension politique. Bien sûr, tout le monde peut être attaqué tout le temps, mais on est plus facilement sensible aux attaques lorsqu'il y a des problèmes, des fragilités. Prenez l'exemple de ces pays du Sahel, et notamment les 3 pays qui ont chassé d'abord la France et d'autres partenaires européens. Je veux parler bien sûr du Mali, du Burkina Faso et du Niger. Chaque situation, évidemment, chaque pays est différent, mais il y avait tout de même, au niveau de la population, au niveau de la jeunesse, et je pense notamment au Mali, un très grand mécontentement, une dimension de gouvernance. Vous savez, on a souvent caricaturé de défendre ces pays et de les aider à renforcer leurs capacités souveraines, mais également d'avancer au fur et à mesure de la sécurisation sur le retour de l'État, qui avait pratiquement disparu dans certains pays, notamment sur le terrain, avec la dimension de gouvernance, et bien sûr les enjeux de développement économique, bien sûr, et de développement en général, avec cette idée que la jeunesse de ces pays devait avoir un autre avenir que la fuite vers l'émigration ou d'être ensuite pris par ces groupes armés, etc., un peu dans le désespoir. Et ça n'a pas très bien fonctionné. Et ce profond mécontentement, évidemment, a beaucoup facilité toutes ces attaques. Les Français, puisque je peux parler de cet exemple que je connais, et quand j'avais d'ailleurs, à la fin de ma mission, je suis allé voir tous les partenaires européens pour leur expliquer ce qu'on était en train de faire, changer. Les Français ont mis du temps à réagir par rapport à ces attaques. Je vous donne quelques exemples. Notre état-major des armées a mis en place, mais pas tout de suite, un état-major dédié à la guerre informationnelle, avec la mise en œuvre des moyens technologiques, de renseignement, etc. Ensuite, il y a eu évidemment tout le travail, et vous parliez tout à l'heure de diplomatie culturelle, parlementaire, etc., par rapport à toutes les manipulations en direction des médias, y compris des tout petits médias, parce qu'on sait que, on peut parler de la Russie, on sait, j'ai lu quelque part, je ne sais pas si c'est vrai, mais quelqu'un écrivait avec 25 millions de dollars par an, on peut déstabiliser un pays. C'est finalement pas tellement cher au niveau d'un État. Par contre, on peut parfois, dans la réponse, avec des moyens assez limités, aider ces nouveaux médias qui souvent ne demandent qu'un soutien, et on peut faire beaucoup avec pas grand-chose, aider tout ce qui structure les jeunes qui veulent prendre des responsabilités, qui veulent aller dans le développement de leur pays, etc. Et bien sûr, il y a la dimension culturelle. Pour les Français, c'est l'espace francophone, mais c'est également le partenariat européen. Je dis souvent que sur les pays du Mali qui ont maintenant basculé dans, on ne sait pas exactement quoi, mais enfin, ils sont en train de découvrir que tout ce qu'on leur a promis, également le soutien de Wagner, etc., c'est pas non plus miraculeux. Mais ces pays, disais-je, aujourd'hui, ils sont un peu à attendre autre chose. Et je pense que l'histoire n'est pas terminée. Tout ce qui a été fait en matière aussi de coopération décentralisée, de projets, etc., n'est pas oublié. Et ce qui a le moins manqué pendant cette période, c'est l'argent. L'Union européenne était très engagée, disposait de moyens très importants pour des projets économiques, des projets de développement, des petits projets de terrain dans les villages, etc. Mais sauf que la situation faisait qu'il n'y avait pas vraiment les projets. Et l'argent n'a pas été dépensé. Donc voilà, tout ça c'est un petit peu dans une mauvaise parenthèse, mais quand je suis en contact avec des gens de ces pays, notamment des jeunes, eh bien, je m'intéresse à ces pays. Je vais vous raconter pour finir une histoire personnelle. Pendant l'intervention française au Mali, mon fils était pilote d'hélicoptère de l'armée française, et lui, il y est allé par idéal. Il se voyait un soldat de la paix, proche de ses frères africains, et il est mort au Mali, quoi. Donc, évidemment, ça me touche beaucoup. Et voilà.
Merci, Monsieur Bockel. Johannes, since you're, again, private sector, so that's very interesting, just like me, I would like you to think with us what could be the shape of a new cooperation between educational institutions, private sector, because they are more agile than public institutions, and in the end, the institutions to help them counter disinformation, production of like malicious content, and anything like that. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. There are different actors that need to sit at the same table. And ultimately, it comes down to the state. The state has the power. They have the intelligence agencies, and there needs to be a dialogue between what we want citizens to be able to do and what the state needs to achieve. The state needs to achieve security. It's the number one priority. What do we want citizens to do and be able to do to be able to secure themselves? As I mentioned before, everyone is now an actor in hybrid warfare, in the power of influence. It's you, it's me, it's everyone. So what do we want people to be able to do? We want them to be able to construct their own realities in the real world and in the digital space. We want to be able to empower people to recognize when there is a disinformation campaign. We want them to be able to have the tools to think critically, to think for themselves, and that's the best we can do. At the end of the day, that's the best we can do. We need critical thinking skills, and we need to be able to empower youth from year 5, year 6, when it starts to become relevant, when they start to use mobile phones, when they start to use TikTok. I don't have TikTok myself, but I'm sure many of you in the room do. That's great. We need the skills to be able to recognize and to construct our own digital reality. So that's when education comes in. I think there needs to be a dialogue there between the education sector with the people who write and sit at the curriculum and actually write the curriculum. And then there needs to be actors from the state there. There needs to be people from the intelligence service who are coming in with a mandate to say, okay, how can we secure our sovereignty? How can we secure our digital sovereignty? How can we secure our, as I said before, algorithmic sovereignty? So there needs to be a dialogue here. There needs to be education. There needs to be educators, people who write curriculums, speaking with the government and by default, intelligence. And that needs to be a national discussion, but it also needs to be a regional and international discussion as well, because there needs to be a normative element there. It can't just be, okay, we each do our own thing. Yes, sovereignty at the national level is important, but there needs to be a regional, normative framework that governs this in terms of the values that we want to instill in that system. So there needs to be this trilateral dialogue between the educators themselves, the states, and of course the students who are sitting in the classroom who are learning this thing. So it's about getting people in the room together at the end of the day.
Thank you. Mrs. Vodo, I would like to intervene on this topic as well, because you're a lecturer in a famous institution, educational institution, super institution. What do you think about our ability as professor, as teacher, to shape the critical thinking of future decision makers and like to being able to give them the tools in terms of strategic analysis, because they will be working as political leaders, they will be working in intelligence, they will be working in the corporate sector. So.
Yes, indeed, pedagogy in general, it has changed, it has evolved so much, and I can see like how students in the classroom, they are so proactive and they are into double checking the facts, and whenever we upload all this list of materials, they are upfront there in order to scroll down all the information, and this is so good. The negative side, the downside is that, of course, it is done in such a fast way. So we have access to so much information. There's a flow of information there. So this is the danger in itself. So whenever I teach, one of the things that I really care to stress very much is the definition. Let's start by defining what we're talking about, even this panel today. So it's very important, first of all, to have it clear in mind, what do we mean by warfare? What do we mean by hybrid war? What do we mean by threat actors? Who are they? Once that this is crystal clear, I think it is much more important for the future leaders, because I mean in some decades they will be the ones running the countries, whatever shape they will have. So it's important to call every entity by its name. This is that giveaway that I would say.
Thank you. Mrs. Yeah, sure.
I think the terminology that you used, really struck me about defining or having a unified definition of a phrase. I think, and this is the reason why we're all here. You have like 6 speakers from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different countries, speaking to a very young and promising audience. I think you can never really have a unified definition for everything. But this, keeps us always on the edge to meet up, engage in discussion, engage in dialogue, and try to bridge these differences. Serving as a diplomat, I came to across many terminologies that were not unified among states. For example, terrorism. I still don't think there's a one unified terminology that defines this word. I just wanted to comment on that.
All right, thank you. It's all about perception, you're right, and cultural differences. Mr. Svoboda?
Yes, so I am, as I said, I am the owner, runner, and director of the Private Diplomatic Academy. And the mission of my academy is that we are welcome everyone, saying, we offer you well-educated, well-experienced people, capable persons. But you will be confronted with the variety of the views. Among my teachers, there are some who are to defeat Europe and who are European from the bottom of their hearts. And one teacher is saying that European Union is illusion. So among our teachers are those who are against Russia and those who are saying that we have to understand also the Russian interest. So I think that's the offer. So it is not a question of definition, what we are how to define the problems, but my mission, the mission of my diplomatic academy, is to prepare young people to be capable of defending the interests of the state, different of the nation, and of course to be those who want to defend peace, mutual understanding. So, and even be capable of understanding the style of thinking of those who are living in the different, maybe, how to help for making the world better.
Thank you. Monsieur Bockel, une dernière intervention.
Vous êtes très convaincant. Si j'avais 30 ans de moins, je demanderais à aller dans votre académie. Ce qui me, d'ailleurs, m'amène à évoquer un point que beaucoup ont cité tout à l'heure, c'est le rôle des politiques, des politiciens. Et c'est vrai qu'on a tous tendance, moi j'ai passé 40 ans de ma vie dans la politique active, et c'est vrai que les politiciens sont souvent critiqués, y compris sur ces sujets. Je pense quand même, et je l'ai vu au fil des années et même des décennies, le monde politique dans nos pays, pas seulement le mien, a quand même évolué. Et ils sont très engagés sur ces sujets, y compris en prospective. Donc il y a quand même une évolution positive. Mais il reste un point négatif. Le point négatif, c'est que, quel que soit leur bord politique, ils sont souvent, et ça me ramène à votre académie, d'où ma remarque, ils sont souvent irréalistes sur les enjeux et les rapports de force. Je vous donne juste deux exemples. Moi, je suis, depuis toujours, je viens d'Alsace, près de la frontière allemande, je suis très européen. Et je crois dans la construction européenne, dans le rôle que peut jouer l'Europe, y compris sur les nouveaux rapports de force. Mais je vois un certain nombre de politiciens, y compris au Parlement européen, considérer qu'avec un certain nombre de règles, notamment sur les GAFA ou sur ces questions, on va pouvoir reprendre un peu le pouvoir. C'est en partie vrai. Il faut de la régulation. Mais regardez par exemple le rapport de force par rapport aux géants américains. Les réglementations dans le monde global, avec les autres intervenants que vous avez cités, chinois, etc., on peut réglementer tout ce qu'on veut. À un moment donné, on risque tout juste d'être mis de côté, de perdre des parts de marché, d'être hors jeu. Donc ça ne suffit pas. Et ce que les politiciens, avec la dimension de souveraineté, et notamment de souveraineté européenne qui peu à peu se construit, c'est qu'on soit également présent sur ces enjeux dans la création d'idées nouvelles. Le rapport de force américain, c'est des moyens, mais c'est aussi à un moment donné des créateurs qui parfois sont partis de zéro et ont bâti des empires. Est-ce que nous, Européens, ou nous, du Maghreb, du Golfe, d'autres parties du monde où il y a beaucoup de dynamisme, où il y a une jeunesse, est-ce qu'on en est incapable éternellement? Non, je ne le pense pas. Et c'est ça qu'il faut pouvoir attirer, hein, comment dirais-je, ces technologies de demain qui doivent pouvoir également nous aider à rééquilibrer en quelque sorte les rapports de force. Et c'est là que les politiciens ont encore peut-être un peu de chemin à parcourir, d'où l'utilité qu'ils aillent à votre académie pour avoir une vision plus large.
Merci, monsieur. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bockel. Our panel comes to an end. I would like to thank all of you for all those very interesting intervention. And I think like we reach a consensus about education in terms of information and how we should keep going and shaping new decision makers in this field. Thank you very much.